Morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's webinar with Annika Digital. I'm very pleased to have Katie with me this morning.
Morning
Katie.
Hello.
And I've got Ed with me as well. Hi, Ed.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Now, Eddie is actually one of the presenters for today. And fortunately, we haven't got the other presenter, which is Greg Gifford. Greg's based in the USA, and I think he's going to be asleep at the moment. So
I think he will be, yeah. The timelines didn't align, put it that way.
So we didn't want to wake Greg up. But what's going to happen today is we're going to do some polls so we can get everybody online, and then we're going to switch over to the recordings of the Leicester Digital Live conference, which was nearly 2 months ago now. It's gone so quickly. The conference was recorded, and we just waited for those recordings, and we're doing a series. So this is the reporting special, where we're talking about GA4, and then we're going to go a little bit about Data Studio, and a really quite entertaining and funny and quite, I warn you, quite an X-rated sweary presentation from Greg. But it was really entertaining. The reason we're rebroadcasting this is we are still trying to raise money for the UNICEF Ukrainian fund. So Katie, perhaps you can just mention that and bring up that offer. That would be very good. So people can have it there, so they can then donate later if they would like to. Have you found that, Katie?
Yep, doing that now.
Brilliant.
I'm doing it as a slide out.
Ah, there you are. Okay, so you should see on the left now, raise money for the Great Cause, donate to LDL's UNICEF appeal. So if you'd like to click on that button, and even if you can only donate,
even a couple of quid, like if everyone donated that would be.
Yeah, if everybody donated 10 quid, we'd do really well. I mean, there's probably 100 people here today. Okay, so yeah, it was just a little bit sweary and lots of pictures of horror movies. So if you don't like horror movies, you might be a little bit.
It's still good though.
So let's start with the polls then, and then Katie, if you want to disappear and man the chat, that would be amazing.
Go now then.
Yeah, thank you, darling. I'll see you later. So let's start the first poll. So the first poll has just appeared. So are you currently using Google Analytics or any other analytics package? No, I'm not working for a business at the moment, or our business does not use analytics. We use the original Universal Analytics, which I'm expecting majority of the people in the room to be using. We have installed GA4, which is the new analytics and the topic for Ed's talk, but are not using it yet. I'm definitely in that category. We've got it, but I don't personally use it. I think Ed actually is using it quite a lot, but we've started to use GA4 as well as Universal. We are progressing well to migrate to GA4. This is if you're actually using it on a regular basis. So I think we've done that progression, but it's not everybody in the business using it. We use alternative analytics products like Adobe. So there's quite a few people, depending on, if their head office is outside of the UK, they don't like Google products, or they've got a paid package. So if you come into that category. So at the moment, nearly half of you, 43%, are using the original Universal Analytics. 25% of you have used GA4 as well. And 19 have actually started using it, and 12%. So actually, it's a pretty good mix there, Ed. More people using it than I expected. So let's go back to the queue, and let's ask about your level of experience. So this is the next question. Now, this time what I've done is I've sort of doing the level of experience for both this and Data Studio. So the Data Studio really refers to Greg's presentation, because he and I'm sure you've seen quite a lot of Ed's presentations on Data Studio. So I'm a complete beginner to both analytics and Data Studio, and maybe even reporting. I'm reasonably experienced at using analytics. I'm an advanced user of analytics. I have some experience of Data Studio, and I'm an experienced user of Data Studio. So you can obviously click more than one button. So that's quite surprising. Nearly 50% of the people are a complete beginner of both tools. We do have quite a lot of the learners from the digital skills boot camp that we're running at the moment. We've got something like 100 learners that have been through that, so that may be some of the audience. Yeah, there's generally a reasonable knowledge of Google Analytics, but pretty much no knowledge of Data Studio, which is really interesting. Any thoughts on that, Ed? Based on maybe even the team, who uses what?
Well, I mean, with analytics is, universal analytics has been around for, like best part of like a decade. So I'm not surprised that most people are like fairly familiar with that. Obviously, you said like, was it half of people not?
Yeah, half of people are using using the current analytics.
Yeah. Okay. Is that just analytics in general, do you think? Are they using like GA4? Have they moved on, or is it not using any analytics at all?
I'm not specified in this one, so it could be a mix of both. But the level of Data Studio is very, very low, and maybe that's something that we need to do a bit of another session on, because particularly with GA4, I mean, I think you're going to make some recommendations that actually Data Studio is a good way to go with it, because it has got some limitations, as we'll learn about in a minute.
Yeah, I think people have a bit of a kind of like a fear with like Data Studio, like it's confusing. They don't really understand like what it is. The tool itself is very straightforward, very like intuitive once you actually get into it, of the very like drag and drop nature. I think the confusion comes around working with the actual data sources and actually understanding what the metrics they're bringing in actually mean. And that just comes with having an understanding of the actual platform itself. So perhaps if you don't know GA very well, then you're going to have a harder job in Data Studio, because you just don't know what you're looking at and what you need to even pull in order.
And I mean, the first few times I used it, I never started with a blank page. I always started with a template that somebody else had built, or or the ones that we've built ourselves.
That's a good approach.
Yeah, and then you can edit it, and then it's easier to understand. It's easier to start messing around with something that's already there. Okay, let me just do the one for the next one, which is I think that's all we've done. We've just covered those two. So it was whether they're using it and what the level of experience is. So before we dive into the video then, Ed, I just want to tell everybody that the handouts are available top right. Obviously, we want you to ask as many questions as you can. Both of us will be available to answer those. Do you want to give us a little bit of an update of what's happened in the last couple of months, and how things have changed, maybe from a point of view of how they're developing the platform and what you're seeing happening, before we actually dive in, and then we can come back and ask some specific questions afterwards?
Yeah, sure. So even in like the last couple of months since we actually did the presentation, more updates have been released, and there just seems to be this like steady stream of almost like weekly updates coming in from Google, and they list them all on their product announcement blog, actually, the actual detail of it. So there's like new metrics and things being added all the time. So basically GA4 has been out for like 2 years. It was out for like about a year in beta, and then it came out just almost a year ago. It was like fully launched. So like the back end of last year, it actually like released out. And that was the time when Google started pushing it onto users, businesses to use. That became like the default option. You suddenly saw it appear. It's very much in like kind of beta state. It wasn't
very good. It wasn't very easy to use at all.
Yeah, it wasn't very intuitive. It was very like underbaked. It wasn't fully developed. Google, it was almost like they'd kind of like rushed this out in a bit of a hurry and just kind of like giving you like 20% of the product. It wasn't really enough to like fully be useful and practical to you. But since that time, they've continuously updated it. More and more stuff has like come out, as you'd expect. And they're really trying to kind of like build this into a fully fledged tool that you can use full time. So what a lot of clients have been doing has been using a combination of universal analytics, which is basically GA3, the older one that's been around for about 10 years, and then just kind of dabbling into GA4. But GA4 is getting to the stage now where it's almost ready to go as your kind of like full-time tool. So certainly if you're like you're setting up analytics from scratch, GA4, the product you just want to like jump straight into. As we'll talk about in the presentation, GA3 is actually going to be sunsetted next year, July. So that product's going to end. So you're going to have no choice but to make the switch over to GA4 anyway. So if you're starting off, you might as well do that now. So yeah, some of the things like in recent months have been things around, so more kind of user privacy controls, more things around how data is managed, because obviously data, cookies and user privacy obviously a big subject over like the last couple of years and continues to be so. And also where data is actually stored and hosted. So, there's been issues about storage of data in the EU and in the US, and how like data from the EU gets passed to the US where Google's based. And so this like passing of data between continents, things like that.
And also they're delaying the cookie demise for another 2 years, aren't they? They've given a bit of an extension. That's not going to happen in Google and Chrome for until 2024 now.
Yeah. But I think they're still like looking for a solution like beyond cookies, and that's something that GA4 does really well. So back to my point about data privacy and the storing of information. So they've given you more controls just recently as to how and where your data gets stored. So now data gets stored within the EU, and you now have controls to instruct Google how you want that information retained, whether you're happy for it to go over into US servers for processing, or whether you want it to stay within the EU block. So you've got things like that. Other things they've just recently introduced, literally just a couple of weeks ago, a few additional metrics, some like familiar ones. So they've introduced bounce rate. So for people like who loved bounce rate in the old product, bounce rate is available within GA4, but it's a different type of bounce rate to what you've been used to previously. So it's calculated a bit differently. Bounce rate, by the way, being it's like single page visits in the old version. So anyone coming to your website and then leaving, it's basically the percentage of people that are actually exiting from your website having arrived. And it's just a metric that's been around like forever that businesses like love to view. It was one of the kind of main metrics that people used to like look at for their landing pages. What's my bounce rate? They've brought that back into GA4 as an inverse to the engagement rate metric they've already had. They brought in more session-based metrics. So now you've got like conversion rates. So you've actually got a conversion rate metric. So we could have calculated that anyway in GA4, but now they've actually brought in an actual conversion rate metric. And yeah, some like additional things around UTM tagging for anybody who is familiar with UTM tagging of campaigns and things like that. But for you guys that if it doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry. But for the guys that
let's dive into the video so people can see some of the things that we're talking about. And then what we'll do is we will come back and answer some questions afterwards. So let me just get the video fired up and then we can disappear, make sure it's all working okay. And then we can get rid of our screens and then, okay, let's hit the go button. So we'll be back in half an hour.
So today I'm going to talk to you about one of the biggest changes happening to Google Analytics, Google's web analytics product, with big changes that you need to know about for your business and the steps and actions you need to take in order to be ready and prepared for this new change. So, important things you need to know. So, many of you will be using Google Analytics. Can I just have a show of hands of how many of you are familiar with Google Analytics? Yeah, quite a few of you. So Google Analytics is the main product. It's been out for 15 years, widely used across 85% of all websites out there are using Google Analytics. So the changes I'm going to talk about affect anybody who's using this product, so most of you guys. So some of the big news coming out that GA4 is launching. It's already launched. It's been out for about 8 months now. But what you need to know is that your existing analytics will soon be no longer. So Google have recently come out with a date, and that date is the 1st of July next year. If you're using Universal Analytics, it will stop working next year. So no more traffic coming into your account anymore. So we need to be prepared. So if your reports that you're used to look like this, like what we have on screen, on your property begins with the prefix of UA, this type of reporting from the 1st of July next year will be no more. So the data will just fall off a cliff, and you'll only have access to it for a limited period. So that access will then be terminated from about 6 months onwards. So Google have roughly said that you'll have access to your data for at least 6 months. After this date, you will no longer have access to your old Universal Analytics reporting. So we've got to make provisions, we've got to be prepared for that change. But there's no need to panic because there is an alternative, and that alternative is Google Analytics 4. And it really brings about a whole new change to the way Google Analytics is done. So it's really rebuilt from the ground up with a bigger focus on data privacy, cross-device platform measurement, and customization. It also has higher data collection limits and makes use of greater use of data modeling and AI insights. So it's really a product designed to meet the needs of modern marketers. The old product, Universal Analytics, was really starting to creak at the seams, hence the reason why Google have now developed this new product. So I'm going to walk you through some of the highlighted features. Some of you may have already kind of taken a bit of a look at GA4. Some of you may have not even seen it or know a thing about it. So we have wholesale changes to the reporting interface. We have an interface that not only just looks different, but has new capabilities. So now we can customize the interface and the reports that we see within the standard reporting. We have a brand new menu and generally a brand new layout overall of the data. So if you're logging into GA4 for the first time, it's going to look very unfamiliar to you. There'll be brand new reports, and there'll be reports that you're used to that you just won't see anymore. So it's a bit of a learning curve to get to grips with, but I strongly recommend that you all jump into it and embrace it. One of the biggest changes to the concept of GA4 is this concept of events. So GA4 is an event-based model. That means every interaction that you send in is now standardized and unified as a single event type. So everything from a new session beginning to a page view to a file download or conversion is now treated as its own event. And those events are explicitly made available and listed in the interface. So it's a very kind of different way of working. So we need to get familiar with these types of events. There's actually 3 types. So we have automatically collected events, stuff the system just takes in automatically. Then we have more kind of auto-tracked events, so enhanced events. So things like file downloads and video plays, scrolls, things like that, other types of interaction. They're all now tracked by default out of the box, which is great. This is stuff we didn't have in Universal Analytics. And then layered on top of that, we have options for recommended events and custom events and anything that you want to send in to GA yourself. Coupled with that, we can now send in up to 25 extra bits of info with each event. So no more being restricted to having to make use of universal events. We can now send in a whole bunch of extra information to enrich the data that we get within the platform. So it really is a bit of a game changer and really opens up the possibilities and the data that we can actually obtain. So just some examples where you might see these events. This is how they look. So we do have a dedicated area where we can see these events. So these are, any event being sent in is explicitly just listed out there in a dedicated event section. But they're also used throughout the different reports, and you'll see them available in columns, and you'll also see them in some of the customizable reports that you want to create. As I mentioned, there's a whole bunch of events that are auto-tracked by default. So if you're creating a new account, just make sure that you have enhanced measurement enabled. So for the first time, we can now track basic things like outbound link clicks, site searches, file downloads, scrolls, and amongst other things. So this makes getting started with GA4 really straightforward and easy to do. And this is all done via no extra setup. This is just via having the page pixel placed onto the website. So no extra additional tracking needed to auto-track this stuff. So there are some new ways to track conversions, and this is one of the fundamental changes, just like the events that we saw, that we as marketers and users of Google Analytics are going to have to get used to. So in GA4, session-based goals no longer exist. So no longer are goals just based on limited event criteria or page URLs. We now have full flexibility to build out conversion events based on the events that we choose. And what's more, this can all be defined within the interface, so we can choose which of the events we collect. We can choose what we want them to be as conversions. So this is really useful. This like turn on, turn off nature of these conversions makes it really super useful for you as marketers. So if you're running like seasonal campaigns that perhaps maybe just run at certain times of year, you can turn off those goals and then reactivate them the next time you run that campaign. So now we have a single conversion metric that different events can feed into. So these different events can all be unified under one conversion event, and it's completely up to you what you choose to define as those conversion events. What's good is you can select up to 30 of those, so you're no longer capped at just 20. You can, if you want to, define up to 30 conversions. These conversions are counted on every event, so unlike Google Analytics goals, they are no longer session-based, so they're counted on every single event rather than being counted only once per session. We have GA4 e-commerce reporting, so very similar to what we had in Universal, albeit a bit more kind of limited in terms of the standard reporting. There is a brand new tracking schema. So if you are an e-commerce website, you are collecting revenue through the site, you want those products and revenue tracked, then you will have to consider implementing a brand new tracking schema. However, if you are using if you do have Google Tag Manager on your website and you have it implemented via the Google Tag Manager data layer, it is possible to convert your existing Universal Analytics schema into a GA4 equivalent schema. So check out what you've got, do your research, find out how you've actually implemented your e-commerce tracking, because it might not necessarily mean a brand new overhaul. But for many of you, it will involve a change of e-commerce tracking. So it's a new streamlined e-commerce tracking schema, and we have a few extra product categories provided with a few new metrics included. So we've got things like add to wish list, view cart, and discount and currency and a few other things like that. But the standard default reporting is limited. So what you see in the interface is really limited and not that great. So we're missing things like transaction ID reports and the kind of checkout and funnel reports that we may have had in Universal Analytics. There's missing standard metrics of things like e-commerce rate, average quantity, amongst other things like that. But these can all be calculated if you use something like Data Studio. These can all be replaced if you're using some kind of custom reporting. But as standard within the interface, you'll find that quite a few of the metrics and dimensions that you have been used to are not available. Whether we'll see those going forward, it's yet to be seen. There's also no product scope custom dimensions as well, meaning that you're unable to send in extra bits of information around product purchases. So as I mentioned, you may need to replace your e-commerce tracking depending on how it's been implemented, but do your research, find out how it's been implemented. If you're using Google Tag Manager to implement your e-commerce tracking, then there'll be a solution there for you to easily convert over to the GA4 schema. So we're not talking about having to fully replace everything. You can run this in addition to your Universal Analytics. So don't feel like you have to go chucking off your own Universal Analytics code. You'll want to be running all of this stuff in parallel. So I'll come on to that sooner. One of the other cool aspects to GA4 is this new rebuilt concept of time. So Greg alluded earlier to the concept of bounce rate being a really sucky metric, and there were lots of sucky metrics like that in Universal Analytics. So what GA4 has done is drastically improved how time and engagement is tracked. So included into GA4, built into it, is engagement metrics. We have engagement metrics like engaged sessions, engaged time, engaged sessions per user. And now we have a way to be able to track proper engagement on our website. So whether the browser is in focus, whether the page is being scrolled, clicked, all of this stuff, it all counts towards an engagement figure that we can put on to our web visitors. So you'll see no more bounce rates in GA4. We now in Universal we now have engagement rate and engagement metrics, which, in my opinion, is a far more improved metric to be using. So these engaged metrics, you'll see them throughout the reports. So you'll see them in things like traffic acquisition, some of the pages report like this. Yeah, and they'll be available throughout GA4 to use. We also have a brand new and much improved audience builder tool. So now we have the ability to be able to build powerful audience segments based on a whole variety of different conditions, and also have that based on time. So we can base it on activity that happened within a certain time frame and in a certain order, a certain sequence. This is something, the time-based aspect of this is something we never had in Universal Analytics, which we now have in GA4. The other really great thing about these audience segments is that we now can turn the conditions that we create as these audience-based segments. When these conditions get met, we can now fire off an event, and from that we can then turn it into a conversion. So now we can have conversion events based on a whole multitude of different conditions. So this is really, really powerful. This is something we just didn't have before in Universal. Added to that, we also have predicted audiences. So we now have data science built into this by default. So provided that you've got the right amount of traffic, if you are an e-commerce site, if you are tracking via the e-commerce tracking schema, and you are collecting revenue, then we now have metrics such as purchase probability, churn probability, and a whole bunch of other predictive metrics. We have a new analysis area, and this is really where you'll find you're having to do most of the work. Because of the limitations of some of the standard reports, you'll now have to become a bit more of a analyst and do your work in the Explorer reports in order to get what you need. So we're all going to have to get a bit more comfortable with building our own custom reports and doing our own diving into data. So the Analysis Hub area is a brand new area that has been made available, where they provide a whole bunch of different reporting templates that you can take and start going with. So for the first time we can, well not for the first time, but we now have our own funnel builder capability. So we now have the ability to be able to build our own marketing funnels based on the criteria we want. And the great thing is that these funnels are retroactive. So even if you've collected the data already, you can create these funnels based on conditions and activity already collected. So if you have any kind of sequential process, any sequential walk through your site that you want users to take, then you can run that analysis and you can see the drop-offs at different stages. Similar to that, we also have path analysis. So now we can see where people start their journeys. So you can select where you want to see where you want to start the journeys and when you want to see the journeys end. So we can build our own path analysis, and this provides us with some really kind of powerful capabilities to be able to do analysis that we just didn't do before. The other really good aspect to this is BigQuery data exporting. So this wasn't previously available to users in the old version. So this is only available to Premium 360 users of the product. This has now been made available free of charge to users of GA4. So now we have the ability to be able to export our raw data from GA4 into our own data warehouse for further analysis. So the ability to be able to take raw data out, to be able to marry it with things like CRM data and other data sources in our own private data warehouse is a really powerful benefit and useful feature that is now free to everyone to use. So some of the things still lacking. So as I mentioned, some of the default reporting is still very, very limited. So you won't be happy with a lot of the standard reports that you see within the interface. Limited filtering options, which is a little bit of a deal breaker for some companies. So the filtering options, ability to be able to actually filter your data, whether that be in tables, whether that be in account level, is severely lacking still in GA4. So most of the filtering you do will have to be pre-processing, either at the point of data collection or done after in something like Data Studio. There'll be other reports and things missing, classic ones being like a landing page report that isn't available as standard within the default reporting. However, you can find those metrics within the Analysis Hub and the exploration section of it. There's still no content grouping, and there's limited based session metrics, and there's limited attribution reports currently. So yeah, most of the criticism really kind of comes from what you can do within the standard reporting interface. It's really not quite as user-friendly for marketers as Universal Analytics was. As I mentioned, there still is a bit of a learning curve with all of this. So I just want to hit you with some recommendations for the steps that you need to take to get set up with GA4 and your roadmap to getting started with this. So the first thing we can all do is just simply install the basic GA4 pixel. So Get the basic All Pages pixel implemented onto your website. Start collecting the data. Ideally, you want to do this before the 1st of July of this year, so that you have 12 months overlap with your universal analytics, and you have at least 12 months worth of data when you come to using GA4 full-time in July of next year. So getting started with the All Pages pixel, there is a handy setup assistant. So if you're new to GA4, you can hop into this. This is probably a good starting point for you to use as a checklist for getting set up with GA4. So I'd encourage you to get started with the setup assistant. As far as installing the tag goes, you've got 3 main ways to be able to do this. So installing via Google Tag Manager is definitely the most recommended option. So if you're using Google Tag Manager, or even if you're not using Google Tag Manager, consider using this, because this is really going to kind of help you out in terms of efficiency and workability going forward. And it's really by far the easiest way to work with GA4 in the long term. Other options you have is simply just installing the pixel from scratch. So just installing the GA4 GTag pixel, which you can grab from the account and literally just paste onto the site. You've got that option, which is useful for basic page tracking. However, if you want to do more if you want to track more advanced things, have more customization options, then you will want to consider Google Tag Manager. Other ways to do it are via plugins. So if you're using WooCommerce, Shopify, there's more and more GA4 plugins trickling through to help you get started with that. So explore the options that make sense to you, but use Google Tag Manager where possible. The process is all about, so what you should do, by the way, is create a GA4 pixel within your existing Universal Analytics. So you don't have to go creating a brand new account. You can just simply create a GA4 pixel within your existing account. The GA4 measurement ID is what you'll need for most tools. This is what will go into your pixel ID. This is what you'll have to put into any plugin that you use. So this is your main tracking ID that you will need to grab. This is how it looks for GA4. So this is how it looks depending on what option you go for. So this is the All Pages pixel in Google Tag Manager, and how it looks is just like the GTag option. So either option, very quick to get going with. You'll want to also adjust the data retention settings. By default, GA4 is set to 2 months, with a maximum limit of 14 months in terms of data retention. So the standard reports aren't affected by this, but the default, the exploration reports that you'll be using are affected by this. So user data is only kept to a maximum of 14 months. But you do need to go in and enable this setting to take it to its full limit. So you'll want to notch that right up, select the 14 months, so you've got as much user data as possible to work with. You want to get set up with product linking, so you want to install Google Ads and Search Console. You want to get those linked to your GA4 account. GA4 provides new product linking capabilities that we didn't have before, so you'll see things like integrations for Google Merchant Center, Google BigQuery, like I talked about earlier, Search Display 360, and many improvements to the way conversions can be imported and audiences can be shared across the different Google products. So for Google Ads, for example, we can bring in cost and clicks metrics, impressions, and the data we used to be able to bring into Universal. But what's good about it now is that the audiences are automatically shared within across the different products. So no more kind of manual importing within Google Ads of Google Analytics audiences. Those audiences will automatically pull through if you've got them connected. And the same goes for Search Console. So a lot of people ask, well, where can I see the Search Console data and Google Ads data within GA4? So this stuff is quite hidden. They do a pretty good job at hiding these types of reports. So These can be accessed within the, provided that they've been linked up, these can be accessed within the acquisition section of GA4 via the card links. So from those links, you'll then be able to get access to your Google Ads reporting and your Google Search Console reporting. The other thing you're going to do, you're going to need to do for planning for your GA4 migration, you're going to want to put together a plan for how you are going to copy across your conversion tracking. So you need to have an understanding of what it is you're tracking in GA3 and what you want to measure in GA4. So it's good to start with a bit of a list, put together a bit of a spreadsheet, work out what you've got, and map out the equivalent event naming convention in GA4. So you can do this however you want, do this in a spreadsheet, but the main thing is that stay organized and be clear on what it is you want to bring across. So creating these events in GA4, we've got two options. Again, we can use Google Tag Manager, or we can piggyback off of existing events within the interface. So the preferred way is to use Google Tag Manager. So you can do this when an existing event doesn't exist and you're wanting to send in something brand new. Sending in an event into GA4 is as simple as setting up a event tag within Google Tag Manager and just specifying what you want that event to be. That event will then appear within the GA4 interface for you to then report against or create a conversion from. You can also you also have the flexibility to be able to create events off of existing events. So you can just piggyback off of the existing events that have already been collected. So for example, if we want to create a URL-based conversion, okay, we can do this via setting the event name of something like page view, and then specifying the page location. So what we're doing here is we're piggybacking off an existing event, like the page view, and then we're making use of the parameters that are available. So this takes a little bit of a learning curve. This involves you having to be aware of what events are available to you and what the parameters are for you to use. We're also going to want to prepare for the day when GA4 universal analytics data is no longer available. So we estimate that that will be in 2024. Google have said 6 months from at least 6 months from when when Google Analytics will expire in July. So we're going to want to get prepared for that and start thinking about that in early next year. We have 3 options for doing it. So we can use the export function within the standard report. So we can just pull off some of that kind of standardized data, export this off via CSVs, via PDFs. I'd probably recommend exporting it off in CSV format. You can do that from any standard report in the interface. The recommended option is to make use of the Google Sheets plugin. So if you do a search for Google Analytics Google Sheets plugin, there's a really cool nifty plugin that will enable you to pull in data from your account and pull it into Google Sheets. So you want to have a think about how you want to do this. You want to plan it out. You want to break down the data year by year, month by month, and pull in all the kind of key metrics that matter to your business. Because going forward, you will no longer have access to the data. So you'll want to store this in static format and keep it stored and saved. If we've got it in Google Sheets format, that's great because we can then pull that into Google Data Studio, and then we always have the option to be able to marry it up with our GA4 data at a later date. The third option I've added to this is using more advanced APIs and storing data within Google Cloud. That is tricky business when it comes to universal analytics, but there are options available if you want to explore that. So they're the three main options. Use the Google Analytics, the Google Sheets, Google Analytics plugin is my main recommendation. So main takeaways from today is get started with GA4 as soon as possible. Get the All Pages pixel put onto your website. Try and do that this month if you can. So you've got 12 months overlap, 12 months worth of data come July next year. Start to get familiar with GA4 and all the metrics included. You want to dual tag your website, so you don't need to go stripping off your universal analytics from your website just yet. You can continue to use universal analytics in parallel with your new GA4 pixel. Use Google Tag Manager, makes life a heck of a lot easier. Just start small and build up, so start basic, go with the most kind of viable option for you, based on your own needs, the essentials that you need, and at the minimum, just get the All Pages pixel put onto the site. You'll obviously want to plan ahead, think about conversion tracking and things like that, and decide on what custom events you need to send in. So challenge yourself to start using GA4. Don't be afraid just to get started with it. There is a GA4 demo account available from Google. If you put in any Google search for GA4 demo account, you'll be able to get access to Google's demo property, where you can play around, explore all the features and options of GA4 before you go setting it up yourself. So thank you for listening, and that's my talk for today. Thank you.
Hello, so I'm back. Ed, are you there? There you are, Ed. I had a couple of questions in the chat. I think Richard was asking about a sort of simple guide to install this. Now, interestingly, I just installed analytics for my property website, and I actually had to go and search in Google to find out how to create an account. But I think if you've already got an account, it's a little bit easier, isn't it? Because you can just create a new profile. So
yeah, that's it. Yeah, so if you've got an existing account, it's as simple as just hitting the create new property button.
Could you perhaps share your screen and go into the Annika one? And let's just get rid of the video.
It's easier to show. It's a really straightforward process to do. Literally, you can do it within a couple of clicks.
Okay. I also asked Richard the question as if you've got something like WordPress or Shopify, sometimes there's plugins. I know that you've been doing quite a lot of work on WordPress. You'll need to share your screen, Ed, so you're doing your webinars if you go next. What you can do in some systems, which is why I asked you the question, Richard, is that if you go in to the Google Analytics and get the ID number, often, like in WordPress and other platforms, you just literally paste that number in because the way that you've built the website, they've already done the link for you. But if you have to set up, you might need to make it a little bit bigger, Ed. So explain where you've gone. So you've opened your account and then you've gone into the button at the bottom left, haven't you? So
so you have to be in the admin area. So this will look the same to everyone who has a GA account. So if you're logging in, you go to the admin area up here. You can see your account name. In the middle is this property column. And in the third column here, you've got your views, the different views. So because we need the actual pixel, we actually need to create a new property. So what we need to do is just hit this button here, create property. It's automatically going to default to a GA4 property. So you just literally enter in a name.
Shall we get rid of our images so that they can see better?
Yeah, do I need to close?
Just close the video bit. That's it. And then it'll be a bit bigger than everybody will be able to see.
You set the relevant time zone. So I'm going to leave that as that is. You can set a currency.
And of course, once you set this once, you can't change it. You're in United States there. Did you realise?
Yeah. You can change time zones. You can do that once in place. Let's just put United Kingdom in order to be proper. There it is. You can hit next. Google asks for some information. Isn't essential. It's up to you whether you complete that or not. I think you can just hit create straight from that.
And this is going to create a GA4, isn't it? It's not going to.
Yeah, so it creates a GA4 property. Next step, we will ask you, well, do you want to collect this data on a website or on an app? For the majority of you guys, it's going to be just a website. The next step, which is different to Universal Analytics, how it was before, it's going to ask you to create a data stream. And this fundamentally, this is going to be the actual part of the pixel that you need to put onto the website. This is going to be your all pages tag. So this is where I specify the website URL. So in this case, it's Annika. I can give it a name. So normally I just give it the same name as the website URL, so I know what it is. So it's Annika.co.uk, and this is like the web one. Web, like that. This enhanced measurement I would leave on. So this is all your auto tracking. So with this enabled, you're automatically going to get data about outbound link clicks, site searches, video engagement, and file downloads automatically pulled in. So that's really useful and is what I recommend when you're starting out. So that's already enabled. So provided you've got this information filled in, you hit create stream. And then it's going to give you this information here for what you need. So from this point, in order to grab the pixel, so if you're using something like Google Tag Manager, this is the information to set up. This is the ID you'll need to enter in. For the actual, if you want to actually grab the actual pixel.
So just to explain to people what you're showing there, then that's the ID number that certain packages like Google Tag Manager and WordPress can use to install it. And just
exactly, they're going to ask for your measurement ID. And that is the ID that you're going to have to use.
And for people that are not familiar with this, Google Tag Manager is another package. There's lots of other ones around, but we use Google Tag Manager, which allows us to put code onto a website without having to go back to the developer. And the sorts of code that we're putting is something like this tag or this pixel. It's often called a pixel, which actually then is used to transfer that information back to whatever platform. So in this case, it could be analytics, but it could be Google Ads, it could be Bing, etc. So that's what we're doing. We're tracking the website, we're tagging the website in order that information can be sent from when people come to that page to wherever it is.
And like I said in the presentation, the recommendation is to use Google Tag Manager as a product for implementing pixels on your website. So implementing Google Tag Manager is similar to like setting up a Google Analytics account. You need to have a Google Tag Manager account. You need to grab the pixel code. You put the pixel across all pages of your website, and then you can do everything else through Google Tag Manager. If you don't want to get involved in Google Tag Manager, then you just simply need to put the tag pixel onto the website. So the GA4 tag pixel can be found down here. So if I'm not going to use the GTM method, the Google Tag Manager method, this is the tag that I need. So I basically copy and paste that, and then that would be installed into your website template, into the code, and go across all pages of the website. And this is the G tag GA4 pixel here. And as you can see down here, that is your measurement ID.
Okay, so for somebody as sort of I would say I'm sort of reasonable at WordPress. I'm not an advanced user, but I was middle level user. I was able to go into the template of WordPress where you can go into the custom code. I found the header section where I could see the code, and I was able to copy that and put it straight into the code. Now, if anybody's never done any code or feel like they would screw everything up, then whoever built your website, and if you haven't got WordPress, you can give them this code and they can add that code on there. Now, what that means is that every time you create a new page, that analytics code is automatically created on the website. Now, the advantage of doing Google Tag Manager is that you can do that for lots of different types of code, and it just gives you a lot more control. And if in doubt, if Katie's still in the room, if she could grab one of the webinars on Google Tag Manager, and we've done lots and lots of training on Google Tag Manager, then you can go and find that there. One of the other things I've got asking, is there anything else you want to show on this? Because I've got a question that somebody's asked, Zach's asked, about UTM codes with Google GA4.
Mm-hmm.
Is there so for the people that don't understand what that means, UTM codes or URL tracking codes is where you actually add code to the end of your URL. And so when it comes into Google Analytics Universal, you can go into campaigns, and you could have said, oh, this is my, it's a newsletter, it's an email, and this is my August newsletter. And then when you go and look in analytics, you can actually see it. I'm not quite sure what you're doing now. Are you just
yeah, so I'm trying to just actually bring up the Google documentation on it. They've recently in GA4 they've just added a couple of more available UTM links, but yeah, for anybody who wants to fully track their campaigns, like you did in Universal Analytics, you need to make sure that your custom campaigns contain the UTM details of campaign source, campaign medium, and
campaign name, isn't it?
Your campaign name, yeah. And there's some additional UTM ones you can put in there as well. I'm actually just trying to find the
I'm just trying to find the one on Annika, where we've actually got a little tool to help you do this. So I'll put a link in a second once I found it.
Yeah. I'm also looking in the background.
There's a few additional ones. So yeah, here we go. I mean, this is the Google URL builder for creating custom URLs. So basically tagged URLs that contain the campaign information. So yeah, so there's the option to add in the campaign ID, campaign source, the campaign medium, campaign name, and then you've got the campaign term and content. So all of these are now available within GA4. So basically, when you're looking up information, you'll be able to find the campaign name, the term, and the content, all available within there, just like you could in Universal Analytics. If you're not familiar with UTM tracking, then that's just something for you to take a look at and understand. It's mainly relevant for non-Google campaigns. So if you're doing advertising on social media, if you're doing email marketing, it's really important that you have all of your links tagged up so that they can be identified properly within the platform.
Yeah, I have GA4 set up and it says it's tracking downloads, but the data doesn't seem to be tracking. My idea was this, it won't be working. The website is set up with a tag using WordPress. So event tracking is basically, we've used this for a while in Universal Analytics. It's where something is happening on the page, such as downloads. So if you can imagine, if you click a button to download something and then you go to a PDF, you can't actually track the fact that you've arrived at the PDF. You can only track the actual event of actually clicking on that submit button or that download button or watching a video. So that's what we mean by event tracking. And that's the sort of the currency that GA4 use. So we would need to look at the way that you've set up that event. And also you need to label it correctly. So maybe you can add some extra help on this question from Kirsty Ed, what would normally?
Yeah, so file download is one of the standard auto tracked events that gets reported in GA4. So provided that you do have enhanced measurement enabled. So again, going back to the screen we were on, when you revisit your data stream.
Can you change it retrospectively? So if you've not done it, you can add it in?
No, if it hasn't been tracked previously, you can't retrospectively bring back the data. You can't do that. So you can
but
only
you can change it and you get data in the future.
Yeah, exactly. But by default, enhanced measurement is already turned on. And the information you get is the file download event. I'm just trying to see so you'd be able to see the event information in a report like this, for example. So if you go into the engagement events.
Kirsty, I think you might need to email Ed separately, because if you've got the advanced and if you've got all 6 or 7 of them marked and it's just the downloads that are not working, we'll need to have a look at that.
Yeah, it will come in under the name of file underscore download. So you will see it in the list if it's available. Okay,
I'm just conscious of time. We do offer if you really don't want to deal with this yourselves, we do have an offer. Normally it's £1,000 to set all this up, but it's 850 as a 15% discount. Also, because we're going to go into the second video now, could you possibly load the offer for the UNICEF again, please, Katie, if you're still there? And we'll also do a quick review if we can do a review for Ed as well, that would be amazing. If you could bring that in, either a Google review or a reviews.io review. Yeah, so if you could leave Google Ed a review for his presentation and the conference, either of those would be amazing. So what I'm going to do now is Ed and I will be in the background still answering questions. I'm going to go over to Greg's presentation now. Ed, if you want to put your email in the chat, and then if anybody's got any questions, we'll come back at about past. So let's play the next video. Watch out for the swearing, guys.
All right. How many of you, show of hands, have not seen me present before? Most of you. Okay. I go real fucking fast. So we have, I forget how many. There's 109 slides. I got 30 minutes to do. So don't try to take notes or anything. Just sit back, enjoy the ride. We're doing Freddy Krueger's Guide to Scary Good Reporting. So my name's Greg, like he said. I have a weekly video series I encourage you to watch called Local Search Tuesdays. It's all local SEO tips. It's short 3 to 5 minute videos, and they're really goofy because I'm goofy. I have like a evil twin that comes out, and it's me because I shoot in front of a green screen. I talk to myself and have conversations and do weird stuff. But it's really good tips on how to show up better in local searches. So definitely watch that. And also, I'm lucky enough to be a very popular presenter at conferences all over the world. When COVID hit in 2020 and they decided to not do live conferences anymore, even though it was March, I already had 28 conferences booked in 8 different countries. So this isn't to brag, this is to set up a joke. So because of the fact I get to go to so many conferences, I get to see a lot of different presenters. And more so in the States than over here, you get a lot of these presenters that are really, really smart and they've got great information, but they're not very good at public speaking. In fact, it's probably the first time they've left their cubicle in 6 months. Typically, they're going to stand right behind the podium the entire time, completely locked in and stiff. Even worse, they stand with their back to the crowd and they're reading their own slides. And even worse, typically, the slides, the background is just plain white, and it's black Arial font, and each slide is packed with bullet points, and they just sit there and read bullet points for the entire presentation. Because of that, I firmly believe that bullet points kill kittens, so today's presentation will be entirely kitten safe. And you saw the Freddy Krueger thing there at the beginning. I was a film major in college. I'm obsessed with movies. This week when I get back home, I will hit 800 movies in my iTunes movie library. I've got a full sleeve of movie portrait tattoos. My whole right leg is a sleeve of Goonie tattoos, and I'm almost done with my sleeve over here. So every time I do a presentation, there's a movie theme because I want to share my love of movies along with my love of digital marketing. So today's theme is horror movies, and we have 94 different horror movie references in the presentation today, with at least one horror movie for every year in the last 50 years. Now, I know that, especially for the younger people in the room, there's going to be some older, more obscure stuff in here that you won't have seen before. So there is attribution over to the side. So are you giving them the slides? Yeah, I'm happy. So they'll give you the slides, or my email address is at the end. You can email me if you want the slides. So you'll have a kick-ass list of movies to watch besides learning about giving better reports. Are you pumped? Are we ready? Now, I know, does anybody not like horror movies? Show of hands. Okay, those of you with your hands up, you're probably a bit worried and you're like, oh my gosh, this might be a bit scary. But I gotta tell you, really, the scariest thing you're gonna see in here is all the bad 80s fashion. So let's kick it off. Why the long face? Do you need a hand with your reports? Lucky for you, I've got a few to spare. Now, I know a lot of times when we're talking about reporting, some people get freaked out. I don't want you to lose your head. Can you even see those? It's kind of bright. You get the point. But to give great reports that your clients will love, you don't have to bend over backwards. In fact, I'm going to give you some awesome tips today that are going to make your reports rock your clients' faces off. In fact, your reports are going to be so awesome, it's going to turn a lot of heads. So, okay, joke part's done. I've got to be brutally honest with all of you. How many of you deliver reports to clients? Hands up, come on. How many deliver reports to your boss internally? I guarantee you, almost every single person that put their hands up, your reports are bloody awful. They're fucking horrible. They're really shitty reports because you're tracking the wrong metrics. You're not reporting on the right stuff. You're overloading your clients or your boss with far too much information that they don't give a shit about. You're also sharing pointless information that doesn't matter to them. And you're not connecting any of the dots to the goals that either your client or your boss has. And that's what the report should really be about. So I'm going to help you create reports that are scary good. So why do we deliver reports, either to our client or to our boss? Shout it out. Come on. Interactive. I know it's early. Why do we deliver reports? Evidence, right? There's two main reasons. Reason number one, we're trying to protect our job. We have to defend ourselves. We have to keep that client or we have to keep our job. So that's why we do the report. Also, we're giving the reports for understanding because we get how digital marketing works, but our clients don't. And a lot of times, if you're in-house, your boss doesn't really get the nitty-gritty. It's below their pay grade. So that's why we give reports. Here's the big problem that everyone has with reports. Monitoring shit is not reporting. The stuff that you have in that dashboard, that is not a report. That's stuff that you're monitoring because you need that data for your job. But that's not the stuff that your client or your boss really cares about. Just because you care about it doesn't mean your client or your boss cares. It doesn't even mean it's important to them. It might be super important to you and your job, but it doesn't matter to the client. The other thing you have to remember, your client or your boss, they can log into analytics at any point in time and see that stuff. They see it themselves. So your report needs to interpret that data and give them understanding about what's going on. If you're just parroting all the information that's in Google Analytics, what's the value for that client? What's the value for your boss? Plus, clients have an unconscious bias against digital marketing. So many people think that SEO and digital marketing is smoke and mirrors, it's snake oil, it's something that doesn't really work. They've been burned in the past. Those bad experiences mean that those clients inherently don't trust you. They think that you're faking everything, so you have to deliver reports to protect your job and show them that, hey, this shit really works, guys. So why are we still delivering these massive, huge reports with all this bad data that clients don't care about? Because everybody still does it. Why are we doing that? It doesn't make sense. Why are we getting on these monthly report calls or sitting in meetings with our boss and just reading numbers off of a report that they can read for themselves? It doesn't make sense, right? Your client came to you with a problem. The reason you or your agency got hired is because that client talked to a lot of different people and decided that you were the one that could solve their problem. Or if you're in-house, you got hired to do a job, to solve a problem for the company. So, why does your report not speak to the solution of that problem? Your report should speak to the solution, not just read off a bunch of numbers. The best reports that you can deliver are easy for the client to understand because we get all the jargon. We understand how everything works. Clients don't. You have to interpret the data and help them understand. The best reports tell a story with the data. Reading off a bunch of numbers doesn't matter. But if you have numbers and data that tells a story so that client knows where they were and where they're going, those are the reports that make clients happy and keep clients around. The presentation and layout of your report is hugely important. How many people have their own custom reports that they've created in like Data Studio or Tableau or something like that? Hands up. Keep your hands up. Okay, not that many. Of those people, how many of you engaged a designer to design the report? You guys rule. You can actually leave. You don't have to pay attention because you probably already are doing stuff right. Most people don't engage a designer to design their report. They just have the SEO team or whoever create these reports and put it together and then deliver it, but it doesn't look good because we're not designers. So it's really important. But the most important thing is knowing what you need to show in the report for that particular client. So at the most basic level of everything, if you really boil it down to the most important concept, you're solving a problem, the report should speak to the solution more than anything else. It's also incredibly important to tie the report into the client's bottom line. Giving them a bunch of data about here's how much more traffic you got. Who cares? Here's how many more leads you got. Who cares? They don't care about traffic. They don't care about leads. They want to sell more shit. So you should have in your report that they're selling more shit. You need to make it incredibly crystal clear that what you're doing helps them sell more shit. You need to concentrate more than anything else on organic traffic and leads because that's the only stuff that really ties into the client's bottom line. Most of the other crap that you have on your report doesn't matter because none of that speaks to increases in the client's bottom line. You could literally deliver a single page report to every client and they would be happy. This is the first page of our report, and we have a lot of clients that this is all they ask for. We look at traffic over time, organic traffic over time, conversions over time, and then the bottom it's just breaking up the different types of conversions. But you do have clients that are going to want more than that. So some clients need more analysis. Some clients understand more. If you're in-house, sometimes your boss needs more data. So why not do both? Have a summary page for the people that don't want to dig in. And then you can have more information for the people that understand more and want to see more. And then on subsequent pages, you have all of the data that they might want to see. But here's the big kicker. You're solving a problem for that client, right? Are all your clients the same? No, they're not. So why not customize your reports per client? Every single client gets a different report because every single client has a different problem that you're solving. You don't do the same work for every client. Why would you give the same report to every client? The other big problem, most SEOs and digital marketers think, if you're getting more traffic and more leads, that means you're winning and you're doing your job right. But it doesn't mean you're winning. You could get 2 or 3 times the traffic and 2 or 3 times the lead, but if they're not selling more shit, you're not winning. When was the last time you were talking to your clients and you asked them how good the leads were that they were getting? It's not just like, hey dude, you're getting more leads, sweet, peace out, I'm done. Where's my check? It's, hey, it looks like you're getting a whole lot more leads. How are the quality of those leads? Are you guys selling more stuff? Or are you getting a bunch of window shoppers and they're low quality leads? When was the last time you asked your client about actual sales numbers? We have clients that send us their sales numbers at the beginning of every month for the previous month so that we can embed that into their reports so that now it's not just, are you getting more traffic, are you getting more leads? It's, we're getting more traffic, we're getting more leads, and here's how sales are increasing over time as well. We're all really good at connecting increased traffic and increased leads. But we rarely connect that to increased sales. And it's not hard to ask clients to give you more data. Clients won't be pissed if you're like, hey man, can you send me your sales numbers at the end of the month or the beginning of the month? They don't get mad, they're happy. Because other agencies that they've worked with in the past haven't done that, and you're the first person to do it. And you've got to stop including all the stupid shit on your reports that everybody in digital marketing thinks is important that clients don't care about. Like bounce rate. Bounce rate's the biggest piece of shit metric ever invented. Most people don't even understand. You know, bounce rate isn't even in GA4. It's that big of a piece of shit that they're just getting rid of it. But clients don't understand that I could land on a page, I could spend 5 minutes reading the content, I could spend another 5 minutes watching the video, and I could scroll through this page. So I've been on the page for more than 10 minutes. I pick up the phone and I call them and I buy the stuff, and then I leave. Google Analytics is going to say that was a bounce with 0 time on site and 0 conversion. You actually want a high bounce rate, because a high bounce rate means that you've created content that people find in Google and land on that page and convert immediately and don't do anything else. So we need to stop worrying about bounce rate. We need to stop worrying about time on site, because same thing, time on site is inherently flawed by the way that Google Analytics calculates time on site. Pages per visit, who cares? I want a low pages per visit, because that means my site is great and people can find what they want very quickly and they don't have to navigate through a bunch of pages. Or the other one, I really hate seeing this. You got 82% first-time new visitors. Okay, who cares? The more expensive your product or service is, the more people are going to do research, which means the people that are converting are not new visitors. They're people that have been to your site multiple times in the past. So who cares what new visitors you have? Or I hate when you get reports that are like, hey, we got you 15 new links this month. Yes, link building is a part of what we do, but clients don't give a shit about how many links that you get, because that's not something that means anything to them. And it's not something that equates to any success in the real world. I could get you 100 links. Is it going to do anything? Maybe if they're good links, but if they're shitty links, it's not going to do squat. Or I see reports all the time where it's just a list of all the deliverables. Here's why I created this page, we optimized this page, we changed the structure here, we redid the internal linking. Who gives a shit? That's a list of a bunch of crap that you did. That's not anything that you should be reporting on. And please, don't include keyword ranking on your report. Rankings do not equate to the bottom line. I could get anybody in here ranked for 100 phrases on page 1 by tomorrow morning, but they'd be phrases that no human's ever going to search. So it doesn't do anything for traffic or leads. So who gives a squat? So why do you have it on the report? Clients typically will gravitate towards rankings because that's something they understand, and everything else they don't get. So even though you may have doubled their traffic and their leads and their sales, they're going to concentrate on those 4 or 5 vanity keywords that they care about, and they're going to be like, oh my God, I dropped from number 1 to number 5 on my most important keyword. Yeah, dude, it doesn't matter. You're selling twice as much shit as you were 6 months ago. No, but I need to be number 1 for this keyword. It's really bad. Geogrids are bad. If you do local search, they have these new geogrids that look like this, that show how you rank like every 500 yards in a grid. Clients love it. It looks cool as shit, but does that mean anything to their bottom line? Does that mean anything about the solution that you're providing? No. So stop delivering shitty reports. We need to all deliver better reports. Screen captures of analytics need to die. They can see analytics for themselves, so you don't need to give them screen captures of analytic. You've got to tell a story. If you don't have a story and you don't have insight in the report, it's a bad report. If you don't justify that client's investment, it's a bad report. If you don't have anything in the report but rankings, it's a bad report. Is anybody a fan of this? Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978? Hands? Anybody? Check it out. I got that dude tattooed on me right there. Super rad, right? Nobody knows this movie. It's like my one tattoo. Everybody's like, I don't know what that is. If you only show a number, if you have a little box and it's like, hey, your organic traffic is this, that doesn't tell them anything. Even if you say, hey, it's this number, and here's what you were last month, and here's what you were last year, that doesn't tell you anything, especially when we've had COVID and it's completely jacked up how people are searching and what website traffic you're getting. A number in a box doesn't tell a story. It doesn't show a trend. Plus, a lot of people are still creating reports by hand. There are so many tools out there that allow you to automate your reports, and that saves you time. And saving you time makes you more money. Use something like Data Studio. It's a little bit of a steep learning curve. It's not like Power BI or anything like that, but Data Studio is amazing. You could do amazing, really kick-ass things with Data Studio, and you could pull in data from multiple sources and then customize how the data is presented. You can build your own reports. You don't have to take some template. So let's think about this. If you're going to save, you're probably going to save more than half an hour, but let's say you save half an hour per client. That's 6 years per client that you're saving by automating your reports. But most people are saving like an hour, so you're saving 12. But let's say that we're saving 6 hours a year per client. If you bill at the industry standard in the States, which is $150 an hour or like 110 pounds an hour over here, that's almost $1,000 a year in US dollars that you're saving per client by automating your reports. And just because you're automating it doesn't mean that you can't customize the report per client. You have a base report that you start with, and then you build the customization elements in so that each client gets something super kick-ass and they love it. And if a client loves the report because it tells a better story and it has stuff in there that really matters to them and the solution that you're providing, that client is happy and they are not leaving you. It's also important to not use industry jargon in the report. I see reports all the time that say organic sessions. Clients don't know what the hell that means. Label your report elements with a question. So you'll see reports that look like this. Sessions, users, goals. Cool, what does that mean to a client? We label all of our elements with questions. So how many pages do people visit? How do people view your site? How do people get to your site? How is your organic traffic trending over time? That makes way more sense to clients. It's already telling a better story, even if you're doing the exact same thing for every client and you're not customizing. But it's really important to think about the people that are going to be looking at your report. We like to have that first page that I showed you earlier, and we call it our owner tear sheet, because most of the time, we're not talking to the owner of the business. Or if you're in-house, most of the time you're talking to your boss, you're not talking to the CEO. The CEO or the owner of the business that's your client, they don't give a shit about anything other than the bottom line. Are you making them more money? They want that top-level analysis of, is this shit working or not? So you have that first tear sheet page, and you only have the most important stuff on that page. And then you want to make sure on that page and throughout the report, you never just display a number. Even if you have month over month and year over year, they can't see the trend. Now, I do that on my first page because I do have the trend data later, and we explain to every client, look, the first page doesn't tell as good of a story, but the first page is just for the owner to know, am I getting ROI or not? Because our first page will have a number like this, a number in a box with month over month and year over year. But then internally, we've got everything else so that you can see. You've got to have that time span of at least 6 months, but typically you need at least a year, so that they can see how things are trending over time, especially if it's a business that has seasonal traffic. If they've got seasonal traffic, they're going to have ups and downs. If they're going down, they need to know that they're still trending up over time. You could tell an even better story with those 12-month charts if you add baselines. So we do this with every client. It's tough to see because of the brightness, but there's a light blue line right across the bottom. You can see the green line pretty easily. Every time we onboard a client, let's say I start someone July 1st. I would take July 1st of last year through the end of June this year for whichever number we're looking at, whether it's organic traffic or leads or whatever. Let's say we're talking organic traffic. I would look at July 1st of last year through the end of June this year, average that together, throw it on there as a baseline so that you can see visually, as long as that client is with you, they can see where they were before they started with you. And that's the blue line. Then we have the green line that at the end of 2020, we added, I can't show current data, my clients get pissed, so I had to use older data. But at the end of 2020, we add that 2020 line. So now coming into 2021, clients could see, here's where I was when I started, here's how much we improved in 2020, and oh my God, look, we're even above that now. We add a trend line for every year a client is with us. That way they can see. And we're honest too. If that trend line goes below the original line, we don't care. We're there to tell them a story and be honest and not blow smoke up their ass. You can tell an even better story if you customize the report for the goals that that client has and the problems that you're solving for that client. If they're a local business, a brick and mortar, or a service business like a plumber and electrician that serves people in a particular area, you'll want to make sure you include Google Business Profile Insights data. So you use the API to pull stuff out, or you use some reporting tool like Data Studio that connects to the API so that you can get that insights data. So you don't have to show ranking stuff, but you can show impressions. Impressions makes more sense anyway, and discovery impressions are incredibly important for local businesses because those are times that their business profile showed up in searches when the person that was searching didn't search for the name of the business. Because you do have a lot of clients that are like, I don't trust SEO, and most of this traffic is people that are looking for my name because I advertise on TV, radio, and print. This shows you, hey, look, you got all these people finding you, and as you do more SEO, you get more discovery impressions over time, which means you're winning, but you don't have to open up that can of worms that talks about here's how you rank for particular keywords. You can also talk about the actions that were taken on their website. More clicks to the website, more phone calls, more driving directions. You want to make sure that you include UTM tracking on your link in your Google Business Profile because analytics is broken and most of the traffic that comes in on mobile devices gets attributed as direct in Google Analytics because there is no referral data. Direct doesn't mean somebody typed in the URL or used a bookmark. Direct means Google Analytics is going, I don't know where the fuck this came from, so I'm just going to put it in direct. So you put UTM tracking to force it to be attributed as organic, and then you include that in the report so they can see specifically the clicks that came in from local customers that saw them in the Google Business Profile. Don't be afraid to filter out bad data either. Some people get freaked out. We have a client that has one blog post that generates 20 to 25,000 visits a month from one blog post. But about 15,000 of that consistently is from outside of the US. And this client was like, holy shit, you gotta take this off my site. It's screwing up our analytics because we've got all this international traffic coming to this blog post. But we said, hey, look, dude, that means about 5 to 10,000 a month are local people that could be customers. So in the report, cool, we just filtered out the international traffic. And now the international traffic doesn't show. Now we're only showing them stuff that matters. Even better, why not filter your reports to always show local traffic from people that are in the immediate area of the business, because that speaks more to the solution that you're providing. If you've got multi-location clients, enterprise level with hundreds of locations or even tens of locations, you can't just give them a standard report. You've got to create a roll-up that shows them information about all of the different areas. So if you'd like an example of a really kick-ass report, I feel like my report's pretty damn awesome. So I'm sharing our Data Studio template with you. Now, we customize this for every client, but this is our starting point. So you can download the template. It's really hard to see. Can you see that URL? It's bit.ly/searchlab-ds-template. That will let you download the copy of our template. If you've never used Data Studio, you typically use data connectors to pull in data from analytics or Google Ads or Google Business Profiles or whatever. But you can also pull in data from other sources like spreadsheets. So I specifically built this template, and it does pull some information from a spreadsheet, so you do need to get this spreadsheet as well for the report to work. But I built it that way to help teach you how to use Data Studio better so that you can see, you could pull in that sales data from a client, and you don't have to have a connector in Data Studio because you just drop it into a Google Sheet, and then it pulls in from there. So if you deliver better reports that tell a better story, you will have happier clients. And happier clients stick around longer, which means all of you are going to win. So thank you so much for taking that crazy roller coaster ride with me first thing this morning. I know a lot of times when we're talking about client reports, we really feel like we're a basket case, But hopefully now I've opened your eyes to the possibilities of awesome reports, and I've given you the key to success. So now your reports are going to have a hook that's going to keep your clients happy. Get it? That's funny stuff, right? So now you'll be able to break out of your shells and give better reports to your clients that make your clients super happy. So thank you so much. That was Freddy Krueger's Guide to Scary Good Reporting. There's my email address. If you'd like the slides and you don't want to wait, you can email me. I'll send them to you. Also, I've got an open email policy, so if you have any questions, you can email me at any time and ask, and I will always answer. It might take me a bit. And also, when you get the slides at the end, there is a list of all the movies by order of release date. So thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, that was fast, wasn't it?
Yeah. He's an incredible speaker.
He is an incredible speaker. And I did warn you he was quite scary. There was a few things in there that I just wanted to comment on. He I don't know whether Ed's joining us, but he did mention about the bounce rate, which I thought was quite funny because we were talking about that earlier. I think for blogs and things, a high bounce rate isn't often an indication that people have read the report and they may have left straight away. We can use event tracking to actually monitor how far they've got down the page, and that's something that Ed's even created custom metrics within Google Analytics, existing one, just to sort of say what the level of engagement on a page is. So you can get around that. But if a site is actually really badly designed and you've got a massive bounce rate, then that may be indicative that there's an issue. And you tend to get a much higher bounce rate above 50 for B2B compared with, you want the bounce rate to be under 30 in B2C. If your bounce rate is less than 1% or less than 5%, then you probably find that you've got the code on twice. So that's actually quite often a good indicator that you've messed it up. So I don't know whether you wanted to add anything else about bounce rates, Ed. I think that's a pretty interesting one. And also, of course, both of you mentioned it wasn't included in GA4, and they've now announced that they're going to include it.
Yeah, it's in a different capacity though, so don't think that it's the same bounce rate that we had in Universal Analytics. The bounce rate in GA is calculated based off of engaged users, whereas bounce rate in Universal Analytics was just simply like a single hit. So single page views, for example, the page loads once, and if that was only recorded in a session and then the session ended, then that would be classified as a bounce. Whereas now in GA4, they do have they've got a much better process for tracking engagement. So even if you just stick around on the page and you do scroll, GA classifies you as being an engaged active user. So the bounce rate is actually calculated.
It's much better now, isn't it? I mean, that's what you want to know, really. You want to know whether they've left because they really hated the page, or you don't want to see it just because of the way that the tracking worked.
I mean, in most of the implementations we've done for clients previously, we've implemented other types of engagement tracking anyway. So we weren't, so we had an alternative to the bounce rate metrics to really understand whether they were on page or not. So we've always had that understanding as a more kind of advanced user, but this is just now baked into GA4, so it's better for everyone.
There's another point that he made reasonably near the beginning, which I wanted to address, and that's the integration of sales data. So a lot of the stuff that we're currently working on, and we will be doing a webinar on this later in the year, is actually tracking a lead all the way through to a sale in a CRM system, a custom database system, and then finding mechanisms to bring that data back. So that's something that we've actually won drum awards for some of the work that we've done on this in the past. But if you are doing lead generation or you're a B2B site that's not pure play e-commerce, it is really important that you understand what happens once you've got that lead and what the commercial implications and the quality of that lead is, because you can spend a lot of money on certain traffic sources or key phrases which don't actually generate leads, will generate loads of leads, but they're never going to generate customers. I remember when we were doing a lot of stuff going back nearly 15 years ago when we were doing a load of stuff on dating, you could get absolutely thousands of free signups, but none of these people actually wanted to spend any money and actually become a member. So you had to target very different key phrases if you wanted to actually make any money for the actual site. Was there any other points that you wanted to raise from the webinar? There was a couple of quite interesting things which I think apply to people that work in-house as well as agencies. And that's really about labeling of the reports, so that you're asking a question. I realized how important this was quite recently for certain people. We use the word traffic, we drive traffic to a website. And I was in, again, to do with this property stuff I've been doing. They hadn't got a clue what I was talking about. They just, what do you mean?
It's that industry, isn't it? Like it's just complete jargon.
It is complete jargon. And actually, the people that the reports are for, either higher up the sort of management, chain or clients if you are an agency. And we do get a lot of agencies join our webinars. A lot of clients just don't understand what you're talking about. And so if you can put it into, sort of language that makes sense to everybody.
Thinking about your target audience, isn't it? Because generally, I've worked, people who maybe like CEO or higher up the chain, it sometimes like have finance backgrounds, and it's kind of like educating them as well, or creating things that are useful to them and they can understand straight away.
Yeah, the other one that I don't quite agree with him is the number of pages as well. It's definitely the case if you can get the information they could get straight because you've got great navigation. That would tend to have a lower number of pages, but certain sites, because Greg mainly works with sort of car dealers and massive chain of car dealers over in the States, a lot of local SEO. So he doesn't do quite as much paid as we do, and he also doesn't do as much e-commerce as we do. I don't think he does any e-commerce. But e-commerce data often shows a direct correlation between conversion rates and the number of pages and number of searches that people do, because people, when they get on a site, the more engaged they are, the more product they look at, the more likely they are to buy. So again, that's something we wouldn't quite agree with.
You don't want to be aiming for a high bounce rate. You want to understand bounce rate, and bounce rate definitely doesn't tell you the whole story. But yourself, if you've got a page that simply has a click through call to action to another page, then the only action on that page is for that user to click through to that other page. Then of course you're not going to want a high bounce rate for that page.
Yeah.
But bounce rate doesn't tell the full story, is basically what Greg's saying.
Yeah, and same with page views as well. You've got to look at the individual circumstances of your website or your blog really to fully understand it. I am aware that we've gone over the 10:30, and I know a lot of people will leave. Maybe we could just bring the donation. I'm not quite sure how many people are still left in the room. But thanks very much, everybody, for all your questions. I hope you've really enjoyed today. Next week's even longer. It's an SEO special, so it's most of the morning. So block out the time in your diaries. Please don't, you're going to need to really get into some great presentations for some of the SEO suppliers. We've got Yoast, Ahrefs, Inlinks, which is Dixon Jones, who used to be the sort of one of the main guys at Majestics. And then also we've got a brilliant one on AI, a use of AI in copywriting, which I think we'll probably run first. That's I'm not quite sure what the order is. And are any of the speakers joining us to answer questions next week, Katie?
Yeah, I think all of them.
Okay, so we need to
remind today. But yes, every single one said yes.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. Well, thanks very much, guys. Have a great weekend. And if any of you've got any questions, if you want to email either me or Ed, it's ed@anika.co.uk and anna@anika.co.uk, and we'll try and help you. See you next week. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.